Abraham's Boys is a 2025 American film written and directed by Natasha Kermani and stars Titus Welliver, Brady Hepner, and Judah Mackey. The plot follows Abraham Van Helsing 2 decades after defeating Dracula, now living in Northern California with his wife Mina and his sons Max and Rudy. I'm a big vampire fan and an even bigger Dracula fan. I've always loved the character. And the idea of Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, writing a story that would be like a sequel to the Dracula novel sounded really cool to me. I mean, like, this isn't a remake or a reboot, anything like that. Instead, it's something that builds on existing lore. I wouldn't call it canon or anything like that, but you know what I mean. It's it's an original concept. But as always, the questions that I ask when something like this comes out is, does this work, and did we need it? The only person here involved that I was previously, somewhat familiar with was the director, Natasha Kermani. Only because she directed a segment in VHS 85. I like the VHS movies quite a bit. I have a love-hate with them, I guess is more accurate. But I think it was called Techno God, which I didn't really care for. I didn't really like her segment at all. But hey, at least here she had solid source material to work with, although that could probably be debated. I did go into this pretty cold, though, believe it or not. I did expect some generic Dracula Return style vampire horror, and this is just not that at all. What I am actually kind of bummed to tell you, though, is that this is more of more of that trauma-based domestic slow burn horror, that you're most likely getting very sick of seeing in recent years. At least I know people have told me that they have been feeling that way. So basically, I think that going in not expecting a traditional vampire film might help your experience, because it's very, very, very far from that. It's rarely scary. There's very little gore, and it's almost entirely dialogue based. And for me, its minimalism kind of just hurt it in every way. Almost the entire runtime, takes place in the Van Helsing farmhouse, or pretty much right outside of it. It really looks and feels kind of like a Western film, which could have worked. But for me, it does not. So I've never read the novel, by the way, the Joe Hill. I don't think it's a novel. I think it's actually just a short story. But I really should check it out someday. Be cool to read. But I've heard that the story does reference Bram Stoker's novel quite a bit. So it's obviously written by someone who's very familiar with with that novel. You spend most of the time with Van Helsing and his two boys, who for some reason don't have British accents, by the way, which I thought that was really weird, because I mean, they grew up in fucking England. They have two British parents. I don't know. Someone explain that to me, please. And so Mina Van Helsing, Van Helsing's wife, was once married to Jonathan Harker, which is Jonathan Harker from the Bram Stoker's Dracula novel, which is spoon-fed to you, by the way, so lazily, I thought. You might be caught off guard like I was. But anyways, here she's very sick and still tormented from, her run-in with vampires decades ago. And the Van Helsing boys are really good kids, but the older one, Max, he's beginning to question his father's motives, as they both have been brought up to basically fear everything and trust nothing. I mean, just think like Halloween 2018 with, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and I guess you're not too far off. That's a reference I guess you could use. So with Mina being sick, Van Helsing has to shoulder the load, of raising a family. And it was interesting, I guess you could say, to see him in a family setting. That it's not something I ever thought I would really see. And as a dad, he's kind of an abusive dick. Another thing I didn't see coming. I expected him to be this kind of a noble man. And I guess you just kind of see a different side of him, which is strange. And is it necessary? I don't know. That might be something that you would ask yourself if you're going to watch this. And I guess you could argue that his behavior, is due to his years and years of battling monsters and being constantly afraid that they're going to come for him and his family. What decades of stress will do to you and all that. And on top of all that, he's also trying to, to train his boys to be ready for the day that maybe evil will return. And also his wife's condition seems to be worsening almost by the day. And like I said, also, as Max is getting older, he's a teenager now, he's starting to wonder if his dad is really, the good guy here. And even more important, do vampires even exist? So I'm going to give Abraham's Boys a 5 out of 10. The idea of questioning Van Helsing's character, after decades of him, being a hero and a legend, was actually fairly interesting, but ultimately wasn't necessary in my opinion. The acting was fairly solid across the board, but none of the characters were particularly interesting to me. Van Helsing included, and seeing him at home in a family drama, no thanks. My favorite part of the film, and really the only part that I actually really liked, was kind of a brief scene shot in black and white, and it actually made me think that this would have been kind of cool if the whole thing was black and white. When it comes to period pieces, this just felt kind of lazy compared to the work of directors like Robert Eggers. I know that's maybe not fair to compare a lot of directors to someone like that, but still, that's what we've gotten recently, and to kind of take a step back and watch something like this, I don't know. And I just also think it would have worked better as like a 1 hour anthology episode, considering it was taken from a short story. I don't know. I just not interesting enough to fill an entire runtime, 90-minute runtime or whatever. But if you haven't seen the 2001 Bill Paxton, Matthew McConaughey film, Frailty, I'd say watch that instead, because I can't really recommend Abraham's Boys to anybody. Also, is it just me, or has recent Shudder stuff been pretty weak? I'm sure they probably put out some good shit that I just haven't seen, but I don't know. From what I have seen, it's kind of taken a dive. Yeah, if you guys have any Shudder Gems recommendations, throw them at me. Maybe I'll check them out. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.